Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are strapping ourselves in for a truly epic plunge into the life of a man whose shadow still looms over modern media, politics, and, well, culture. William Randolph Hearst.
It really does. We're talking about the original media mogul, maybe the most famous in American history.
Think of him as the precursor to every publishing titan, every cable news owner,
And every social media kingmaker all rolled into one really powerful, really contradictory figure.
Right. So our mission today is to go far beyond the caricature, beyond Charles Foster Kane, and really uncover the real, complex, and often explosive life of the man who created the Hearst Communications empire.
And what an empire it was. At its absolute peak, we're talking the mid-1930s, this wasn't just a handful of papers.
No, this was the nation's largest newspaper chain. He controlled the editorial positions, the political coverage, across almost 30 papers, plus all the magazines.
The reach is what's just staggering. He was hitting about 20 million daily readers.
20 million. I mean, that's a huge portion of the entire literate American public.
And they were all being fed a singular viewpoint every single day. That scale, it allowed him to pioneer methods that were, let's say, often sensationalistic.
Ethically questionable.
Oh, absolutely. And those methods really influenced the direction of popular media for the next century. He figured out, before almost anyone else, how to leverage his personal views directly into public consumption on a massive scale.
So he wasn't just selling news.
No, he was selling his opinion, packaged as news.
Okay, let's start at the beginning with his lineage. Because to understand the sheer financial muscle he had, you have to know where he came from.
Yeah.
He was born in San Francisco, 1863, into just serious wealth.
Yeah, serious Gilded Age wealth. His father, George Hearst, was a brilliant mining engineer, became a millionaire from huge stakes in things like the Comstock Lode in Nevada.
Right, and the Homestake mine.
Okay.
This wasn't old money. This was raw, self-made mining power.
And that translated directly into political influence. He eventually became a U.S. Senator for California.
And his mother, Phoebe Aberson Hearst, was just as important, a major figure in her own right, especially in philanthropy and education.
A true force. Phoebe became the first woman regent of the University of California, Berkeley. She poured the family fortune into education, funded anthropological expeditions, established libraries.
So you have this family with immense money, institutional power.
And a very early taste for influencing public life. They understood power beyond just holding office.
So you'd think this wildly privileged background would produce, a quiet, conformist young man.
Not even close. What's fascinating is how his youth was defined by this calculated rebellion against authority. He went to St. Paul's School, which was very rigid, and then he gets into Harvard in 1885.
But his time there was more about spectacle than scholarship, right?
Completely. He was already practicing the art of the sensational gesture. He was in the elite clubs, Delta Kappa Epsilon, the hasty pudding theatricals.
And crucially, the Harvard Lampoon.
Exactly. His first taste of using print for subversive ends, but his college antics are what's really legendary, just massive expenditures.
The party.
Oh, the party, sponsoring these huge unsanctioned beer parties right on Harvard Square for hundreds of students. But the thing that finally got him expelled, that was something else entirely.
The chamber pot incident. You have to tell us about this.
So he notoriously sends chamber pots, sometimes they're called pudding pots, to several of his professors, the ones he really disliked.
Okay.
But get this, the twist, the real stroke of malice, was that he had their own images, pictures, or drawings of them depicted inside the bowls of the pots. Yes, it was this public, graphic, unforgettable insult designed to humiliate them. And that was the end of his Harvard career. It just shows, even at 24, he understood how to use imagery and spectacle for maximum impact.
That is just an incredible dedication to a prank. But his expulsion seems to be the pivot point, right? The moment he goes into publishing.
It is. He needed something to do. He'd been begging his father for a paper, and the senator finally relented. In 1887, he gives him control of the San Francisco Examiner.
And the origin of the Examiner is classic Gilded Age stuff.
It really is. His father got it back in 1880, not because he was interested in journalism, but as repayment for a gambling debt. It was just a failing paper, a pawn.
And Hearst immediately stamps his personality all over it. This little paper, acquired for a debt, is suddenly branded the monarch of the dailies.
The audacity, right. But he took it incredibly seriously. He poured money into it, getting the most advanced printing equipment available.
Which let him print faster, with more visual impact than anyone else.
Exactly. And critically, he recruited star talent. He didn't just recruit, he poached. He went after the best writers of the time and paid them handsomely.
Who was on that early roster?
Literary giants. Ambrose Bierce, who had this powerful, cynical voice, Mark Twain, Jack London, and the political cartoonist Homer Davenport. This willingness to spend a fortune on star columnists was a hallmark of his approach from day one.
So what was the tone of this new monarch? Was he already the conservative firebrand he'd later become?
The complete opposite, which is one of the great contradictions of his life. He started as a self-proclaimed fire-breathing populist.
Really?
His editorial stance was aggressively anti-corruption. He'd run these long, detailed exposés on municipal and financial rot. And here's the kicker. He even attacked companies his own family had financial interests in.
Wow, so he was willing to bite the hand that fed him.
For circulation and for the cause, he used the paper to speak for the working class, to denounce the rich elite, the very class he belonged to. It was pure progressive movement stuff, and it was wildly effective. He dominated the San Francisco market in just a few years. It was his training ground.
Okay, so San Francisco was just practice. The main event was always going to be New York City.
Absolutely. He knew a national empire was impossible without conquering the biggest media market in the country.
So in 1895, he makes the leap.
He does. He's 32. His father had passed away, and the real fuel for this expansion came from his widowed mother, Phoebe, and her deep pockets. With her money, he buys the failing New York Morning Journal.
A penny paper.
Right, selling for just 1 cent, aimed squarely at the working class and immigrant population.
And he doesn't just, try to compete. He goes straight for the throat of the man who basically invented the modern mass-market newspaper, Joseph Pulitzer.
It was an immediate, brutal, no-holds-barred circulation war. And Hearst's first move was a massive, expensive raid on Pulitzer's best people, a talent heist on an unheard-of scale.
Who are the key figures he managed to steal away?
He got Pulitzer's 3 top editors, Sunday editor Morrill Goddard, Solomon Carvalho, and a young Arthur Brisbane, who became a key figure in the Hearst empire for decades. He also got writers like Stephen Crane.
But the biggest raid, the one that gave the whole era its infamous name, was when he stole the Sunday staff, including the cartoonist Richard F. Outcault.
That was the kill shot. Outcault was the creator of the wildly popular comic strip character, the Yellow Kid.
So Hearst literally stole the mascot of Pulitzer's Sunday paper.
He did, and for a while it was absurd. Pulitzer hired a new cartoonist to draw the Yellow Kid for the world, while Outcault drew him for the Journal. You had 2 yellow kids in New York, which just perfectly symbolizes the insanity of this war.
And this is the crucible of yellow journalism. What was Hearst's recipe for success in this fight?
Massive, immediate emotional appeal, things the traditional papers found vulgar. He printed these giant screaming headlines over lurid stories about crime, corruption, sex, innuendo. The goal was to shock and entertain.
And Pulitzer had to react.
He was forced to. The world was selling for 2 cents. To compete, Pulitzer had to drop his price to a penny, too, which just doubled the intensity and the financial cost of the war. It was a race to the bottom on price and a race to the spectacular on content.
It sounds like a truly nasty environment. And yet the sources say Hearst was actually a pretty good boss.
That's another great contradiction. He was known to be generous and unfailingly polite to his staff. He paid way more than his competitors, which is how he got the best talent. And he gave them page 1 bylines, a huge status symbol at the time.
And he was tolerant of artistic temperament.
Incredibly tolerant. The sources say he indulged prima donnas, eccentrics, bohemians, drunks, or reprobates. He didn't care about their personal lives as long as they delivered compelling, sellable copy.
Output over everything else.
Pretty much.
So let's define yellow journalism a bit more clearly. We know the name comes from the comic. It's about sensationalism, drama, which critics called cheap. But Hearst had a motto for it, right?
He did. While others talk, the journal acts. That speaks to his whole activist approach. It wasn't just about reporting the news, it was about making things happen.
But there's a more intellectual defense of this philosophy, isn't there, from the historian Kenneth White?
There is, and it's fascinating. White argued that instead of just racing to the bottom, Hearst actually drove the penny press upmarket in terms of engagement.
Upmarket. How could screaming headlines about a murder be upmarket?
White's point is that good yellow journalists sought the human in every story. They focused on things with immediate, relatable human stakes. The exploitation of working women, brutal police tactics, corrupt city contracts, stories the highbrow papers ignored.
So they were appealing to gut instincts.
Exactly. They believed that this emotional appeal was an honest way to communicate. And the core justification was that our emotions, they tend to ignite our intellects. A story that makes you feel outrage is more likely to make you think and act than a dry, objective report.
That's a pretty remarkable justification for maximizing drama.
It is, but this war with Pulitzer, it had to have cost a fortune, an astronomical amount. He was basically burning through his mother's mining money. He likely lost millions in just the first 3 years, which would be an unimaginable sum today.
But it worked.
It worked. The journal finally became profitable after the two papers, exhausted, declared a truce in late 1898.
And that truce came right around the time of the Spanish-American War, an event that is permanently tied to the Hearst legend.
It is. The morning journal circulation just exploded. It went over 1 million daily after the sinking of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor. The conflict was often called the Journal's War.
How much influence did his paper actually have in starting it?
Immense influence in provoking American outrage. The coverage leading up to the war was just relentless, aggressive sensationalism. The yellow papers, led by the Journal, ran these huge headlines blaming sabotage for the Maine's explosion with zero evidence.
And they focused on Spanish atrocities in Cuba.
They framed it like a horror story. They covered the reconcentrado policy, where the Spanish general Weyler, they called him the Butcher, forced Cubans into concentration camps. The Journal covered this relentlessly, often exaggerating the numbers, emotionalizing the tragedy to the absolute maximum.
Which leads that famous, maybe mythical anecdote, the cable to his illustrator, Frederick Remington.
Please remain. You furnish the pictures and I'll furnish the war.
It's the perfect soundbite for a media manipulator.
It is, but historians largely reject his claims that he single-handedly started the war. They see it as a gross exaggeration. While the Journal was definitely one-sided and full of errors, the national outrage stemmed more from the verifiable reality of Spain's brutality than just the melodrama in the New York papers.
So the yellow press poured gasoline on a fire that was already burning.
That's a great way to put it. And Hearst was personally all in. He sailed to Cuba himself with a small army of reporters and printing equipment. He was totally committed to the cause.
And this media success, this national profile he built during the war, it bled directly into political ambition.
It did. To help with that, he started expanding his empire papers in Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston. At his peak, he had 28 dailies nationwide, and he used that power to launch his own political career.
Which was not so successful.
Largely a story of dramatic failures. He did get elected twice to the U.S. House as a Democrat, from 1903 to 1907, but he had to make a deal with Tammany Hall to do it.
Wait, Tammany Hall?
Yeah.
The very model of the corrupt city machine he supposedly fought against.
The ultimate irony, right? He made a bargain with the devil for their organizational power, but it didn't last.
And his runs for higher office were just disastrous.
Utterly. He failed in a run for president in 1904. He failed to become mayor of New York City in 1905 and 1909, and he failed to win the governorship of New York in 1906.
Earning him the nickname William also Randolph Hearst.
Exactly. And this string of defeats led to a profound shift. He started on the left wing of the progressive movement, but his entire political outlook was about to change.
This is the great political pivot. After World War I, after the rise of Bolshevism, he moves hard to the right.
Gradually but decisively. He becomes a militant nationalist and a rabid, uncompromising anti-communist.
And his papers become the loudest voice for American isolationism.
That became central to his platform. He was deeply suspicious of any international entanglement, like the League of Nations. He promoted strict non-involvement in European affairs, even emblazoning America first on his mastheads.
Which makes his initial support for Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1932 so interesting.
He backed FDR's nomination, but he did it based on a completely wrong reading of the man. He thought he was getting a properly conservative leader who would stabilize things but not interfere too much with business.
He even influenced the choice of the running mate.
He did. He pushed for John Nance Garner, a conservative Texan who preached America first and hated socialism.
But that alliance with FDR didn't last long at all.
It blew up by the spring of 1935. The scope of the New Deal became clear, and Hearst turned on him. He called the New Deal's relief program more communistic than the communist and un-American to the core.
His papers backed the Republican in 36.
They did. But here's the reality check. Hearst's massive working-class readership, the very people he courted, overwhelmingly backed Roosevelt. It showed even his enormous influence had its limits.
And his international coverage around this time became maybe the most controversial part of his career, especially regarding Nazi Germany.
It's a very complicated and ethically fraught chapter. The sources say he condemned the domestic practices of Nazism, like the oppression of religious groups. But geopolitically, he saw German demands for restoring territory lost after World War I as legitimate.
He seems to have accepted German propaganda pretty readily.
He did. He instructed his reporters in Germany to give positive coverage and even fired ones who refused. And most staggeringly, his papers ran columns by high-ranking Nazis like Hermann Goering and Alfred Rosenberg.
Without rebuttal?
Without rebuttal. Now, he did visit Hitler in 1934 and supposedly challenged him on democracy. And after Kristallnacht in 1938, his papers did denounce Hitler's brutal oppression.
But then he flipped again.
He did. Once Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, his anti-communism took over completely. He published a column calling Hitler the savior of Europe from communism. It just shows his overriding priority was always anti-communism and isolationism.
The other major international controversy was the Holodomor, the Ukrainian famine, and this also tied directly into his fight against FDR.
A classic example of using a human tragedy for political ends. To oppose FDR's policy of establishing diplomatic relations with the USSR, Hearst ordered his editors to aggressively reprint eyewitness accounts of the famine.
Where did he get these accounts?
From a Welsh journalist named Gareth Jones and a disillusioned American communist, Fred Beale. Hearst used the tragedy to portray the Soviet Union as a monstrous, starving entity that was unfit for American recognition.
Which put him in direct conflict with the New York Times.
It did. The Times was generally promoting better relations with Moscow, and their correspondent, Walter Duranty, printed blanket denials of the famine, calling the reports a politically motivated scare story.
And the Hearst papers might have manipulated the timeline a bit.
Critics noted the famine was updated in his papers, creating the false impression that mass starvation was continuing into 1934, long after the worst had passed. It just highlights that core contradiction. Crusading for truth at home, but willing to distort it for political expediency abroad?
That political act brings us to the man himself. His private life was just as dramatic, especially his family and his incredible mania for collecting.
Absolutely. He married Millicent Wilson, a 21-year-old chorus girl, in 1903. They had 5 sons.
But the marriage fell apart because of his long-standing, very public affair with the actress Marion Davies.
It did. He was obsessed with her career, even started a film studio, Cosmopolitan Pictures, mostly to promote her.
And they separated from Millicent but never divorced.
Correct. She remained legally married to him until his death, but she built an entirely independent and impressive life for herself in New York as a philanthropist. She founded the Free Milk Fund for Babies in 1921, which ran for decades, a powerful counter-narrative to her husband's image.
Meanwhile, Hearst was living openly with Marion Davies in California, and they had one of the best-kept secrets in Hollywood.
They did. Marion Davies had a woman named Patricia Lake who was always presented as her niece. The truth only came out after Lake's death in 1993. Her family confirmed she was, in fact, the biological daughter of Marion Davies and William Randolph Hearst.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about the incredible mania for building and collecting. This is where the Citizen Kane comparisons really start to hit home. The extravagance was just unparalleled.
It's almost beyond comprehension. In 1919, he starts construction on what he called La Cuesta Encantada, the Enchanted Hill near San Simeon, California, Hearst Castle.
On 250,000 acres of land.
An estate with a main building, 3 massive guest houses, and an entire zoo, and it was never finished in his lifetime. Construction just went on for 28 years.
And what made it so unique wasn't just the size, it was how he furnished it.
He was literally buying and importing the past. The mansion was filled with art, antiques, and get this, entire historic rooms that he bought and imported from palaces and monasteries across Europe.
What kind of things are we talking about?
Entire Spanish wooden ceilings, Renaissance fireplaces, dozens of Roman sarcophagi, tens of thousands of yards of oriental carpets. He had agents scouring Europe, dismantling castles to ship the pieces home. The logistics were as staggering as the price tag.
And San Simeon wasn't enough. He had other massive properties.
Quintoon in Northern California, the Beverly House Mansion in Beverly Hills.
And he bought a castle in Wales as a gift for Marion Davies.
An impulse buy. St. Donat's Castle. He saw it in a magazine and just bought it. He spent a fortune renovating it, installed 34 marble bathrooms.
And moved an entire great hall from another priory, brick by brick.
Yes, from Bradenstoke Priory. Meticulously dismantled, shipped, and reconstructed at St. Donat's. He hosted parties there for Charlie Chaplin, Winston Churchill, a young JFK.
He was assembling one of the most vast and varied private art collections in the world.
Impossibly vast. Greek vases, medieval suits of armor, Spanish furniture. His library had books signed by their authors. The sources even mention he owned Thomas Jefferson's Bible and George Washington's waistcoat.
And the tragic irony is that this reckless extravagance happened right up until the spectacular collapse of his empire during the Great Depression.
The financial disaster was immense. It was a direct result of overextension, the Depression, union strikes. But mostly, his refusal to stop spending. He just could not stop buying art and building things, even as his company was bleeding cash.
It sounds exactly like Charles Foster Kane refusing to face reality.
It was. Finally, in 1937, his creditors forced his hand. The Hearst Corporation faced a court-mandated reorganization, and Hearst, the monarch of the dailies, was reduced to being an employee of his own company.
And this is where Marion Davies steps in as his savior.
It's a critical part of the story. To stave off bankruptcy, she sold everything, all her jewelry, stocks, bonds, to give Hearst a $1 million loan. She even raised another $1 million from a rival publisher.
And he had to start paying rent to live at San Simeon.
The ultimate humiliation. His salary was slashed from $500,000 a year to $100,000.
And what happened to that incredible collection?
A massive, humiliating fire sale. Thousands of items were sold off in auctions between 1938 and 1939. Priceless tapestries, Greek sculpture, the entire contents of St. Donat's Castle. And because of the depressed market, he often sold them at a steep loss.
Despite that financial collapse, his ultimate legacy often comes back to fiction. We have to talk about his great American antagonist, Citizen Kane.
The film, released in 1941, was a devastating cinematic interpretation. Kane's estate, Xanadu, was clearly Hearst Castle. Now, the character of Kane was a composite of several Moguls, but Hearst didn't see it that way.
No, he was enraged. He saw it as a thinly disguised, viciously unflattering portrait, especially of his relationship with Marion Davies.
And he reacted with the full force of his empire without even having seen the movie. He ordered a total news blackout on the film and all his papers and radio stations. He pressured theater chains to refuse to show it.
And that pressure worked, at least at first.
It did. It severely hurt the film's box office numbers and damaged Orson Welles' career at the time. But the great historical irony is that the film he tried to bury is now considered one of the greatest movies ever made, ensuring his fictionalized life outlived his political one.
And the film cemented this reputation. But the list of legitimate criticisms against the real Hearst is extensive.
It is. On journalistic ethics, critics noted he routinely invented sensational stories, faked interviews, ran phony pictures, and distorted real events. It was a calculated strategy to sell papers and push his agenda.
And that manipulation often extended into really serious issues, like racial bias.
Absolutely. The anti-Asian racism on the West Coast was systematically fanned by his papers, and that prejudice continued into the 1940s when he staunchly supported the Japanese-American internment during World War II, using his media power to build support for it.
And then there's the story of cannabis prohibition, which perfectly fuses his self-interest with his media power.
A perfect example. He collaborated directly with Harry J. Anslinger, the head of the Federal Narcotics Bureau, to ban hemp. His papers ran all the classic reefer madness-style fear-mongering stories.
Why? Because of the paper industry.
Exactly. The new hemp paper industry posed a direct threat to his massive investments in the traditional wood pulp paper milling industry. So his sensationalistic crusade, cloaked in anti-drug propaganda, was really about protecting his corporate interests.
So let's conclude with his final years. Did the empire ever fully recover from the collapse?
It did, thanks to the wartime economy. The Hearst Company returned to strong profitability during World War II due to skyrocketing advertising revenues.
And he died in 1951.
Yes, in Beverly Hills at age 88. His will established 2 charitable trusts to control the stock, ensuring the company remained privately held.
And Marion Davies briefly had a controlling interest.
She did. She inherited 170,000 shares, which, with an existing trust, gave her control. But she later relinquished the large block of shares back to the corporation.
And his sons. Did they follow him into the business?
They all did, with mixed results. Curiously, none of his 5 sons graduated from college, but they all went into media, and his namesake, William Randolph Jr., even became a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter, maybe trying to bring a level of respectability that often eluded his father.
So what does this all mean? Our deep dive reveals Hearst as a figure just, defined by these spectacular contradictions.
He was a self-proclaimed populist who lived like royalty in castles, a crusading journalist who attacked corruption while often inventing the news.
And a political kingmaker who couldn't win an election for himself.
But what's fascinating is the lasting impact of his methods. He established this dangerous but undeniably effective blueprint for media engagement, one that prioritized raw, emotional appeal over sober fact.
He believed that feelings tend to ignite our intellects. That melodrama was the path to getting people to think.
Exactly. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Hearst had to spend millions to steal a cartoonist and slash prices to a penny to win his circulation war. Today, algorithms and social media deliver that same emotional spectacle, that same yellow journalism strategy, directly to your screen, instantly and for free.
A terrifying thought.
If Hearst proved that igniting intellects through feelings is the key to massive influence, where do we see that precise strategy most aggressively employed today? Every source, from cable news to a viral video, is fighting for your attention just as fiercely as the journal fought the world a century ago. The tools have changed, but the emotional manipulation strategy, honed by William Randolph Hearst, remains the essential operating principle.
A compelling and frankly chilling thought to end on. Thank you for diving deep with us today. Keep exploring.